can download all of these different handouts here. One of them is a little brief about our solutions with respect to mobility. The other one is just a generalized product data sheet over our Passport product, which Hilo is using quite copiously. A couple of case studies on Hilo, one geared towards how they're using our technologies in registration, the other geared towards how they're using it elsewhere. And then we also have an infographic that you can download. It's just a clean one-pager that talks about the implications of electronic signature being used at one of our other customers, Halifax Health System out in Daytona Beach, Florida. So it talks about how they're using eSignature. They actually have about a 115-bed emergency department, and they use this not just in registration, but they also use this at the bedside there on their mobile workstations on wheels. So pretty cool stuff, so check all that out. Lindsay, how are we coming as far as Chris is concerned? Any update on that?
Yeah, she said she can hear us, so I believe she's ready to go.
All right, Chris, are you on the line?
I am. Good morning.
Woohoo! All right, good morning. So it's good, everybody, it's good morning to Chris because she is quite a few hours to our left if you're looking at a map, way out west out in Hawaii, which Chris, I, as well as many of the people on the line here, are in the northeast, which we are going to be getting like a foot of snow. So I think it's safe to presume that you're probably in a slightly different circumstance over there. Is that correct?
Yes, that is. It's about 85 out, and it's a little overcast today, but definitely nowhere near snow weather.
I see. I see. So overcast, I'm so sorry you're having to deal with that. It's troubling when you don't have just rainbows and whales obviously going right off the shore all the time, and it's ideal conditions. So I'm really sorry. We all have our struggles, right?
Yeah, it's about choosing your battles.
Exactly. So, all right, guys. Hey, the other thing I want to mention here before I turn it over to Chris, which I'm going to do an intro to her here in a moment, we also have a eSignatures buyer guide. Okay, this is brand new. And what we're going to do is after this presentation, we're going to be sending you guys all an email saying thanks for coming and all of that good stuff. But what we're also going to do is provide a link where you guys can download our eSignatures buyer guide. This is something that we've built and we wrote to serve as just a good resource for anybody that's looking to acquire an electronic signature technology really for patients, okay? So it goes through a variety of different aspects of e-signature as a whole, not our product, it's not product specific, it's just here's things to consider when you are evaluating electronic signature. Here's the questions to ask. Here's some interesting things about devices that you should consider. It's basically all this collective wisdom that we've gained from doing e-signature for over a decade. We've put it into a document, and we want to make sure that you guys all have access to that after this presentation. So, Chris, it probably has a lot of stuff in there that you would have liked to have known about prior to coming on board with an e-signature technology, but anyhow, okay, so a couple of things also. This is a presentation, a webinar specific for MEDITECH organizations. So we're going to talk about MEDITECH quite a bit. You know, Chris obviously is a MEDITECH user. She's going to talk about her experiences with MEDITECH and how our technologies integrate with MEDITECH. So I wanted to also say this. We are a MEDITECH partner. MEDITECH actually demonstrates our software. As a matter of fact, we have a team of people working with MEDITECH this week. I just was told about 30 minutes ago that everything is finalized for HIMSS. And what I mean by that is if you go to the HIMSS show and you go to MEDITECH's booth and you ask them to show you patient e-signature for registration, patient e-signature with their new web ambulatory system, patient electronic signature for procedural consents at the bedside, they're going to be demonstrating all of that stuff there. Okay, so go check us out at the MEDITECH booth at HIMSS. They're demonstrating our technologies. Also, one of the things that's really neat about MEDITECH is they're not just a partner of ours, or we're a partner of theirs, however which way that goes. MEDITECH also is a customer. All right, we showed off some of the technologies that Chris actually acquired from us. We showed it off to MEDITECH a while back, and primarily the technology is called Passport, which is a web-based form solution that can be used in a variety of clinical applications, but it also has applications on the back office side where we can automate some business processes. And so they use us, MEDITECH uses us to convert processes like employee evaluations, work from home requests, expense reimbursements, travel requests, purchase requests. MEDITECH uses us to convert those to fully electronic web-based forms that also have workflow for automated approval processes. So there's a nice little quote from Scott Radner, VP of Advanced Technology, that really headed up that project with us. So it's pretty cool. So we, along with Google, are the only pieces of technology that MEDITECH has ever chose to actually buy versus build. So we're very proud of that. Kind of a nice feather in our caps. One of the things too, before I do get to Chris, is we want to know where your most painful paper-based issue is. I was talking with Chris about this the other day too, and we just want to make sure that what we're doing is we're speaking to you guys appropriately. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll, and guys, feel free to click on that. You know, just let us know, because I'm going to then take these results that you guys give to us, and I'm going to share them with everybody. So feel free to click and choose where your issues are. I know some of you have probably been dealing with emails and other things as well, but hey, this is the part where you can actually interact with us. So again, we just want to know where your paper-based issues are, and again, we're going to share this here in just a second. So I'm going to leave this open for just a little bit longer. I'm seeing some results come in. Okay, it's very interesting. Chris, I think you might be surprised whenever you see these results, or maybe you can appreciate where these people are coming from. All right, I'm going to give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, closing the poll. If you didn't get a chance to answer, sorry about that. Okay, so I just shared the poll results. Chris, can you see it?
Yes, I can.
All right, so it looks like I got, yeah, 41% of you are talking about the registration process is where you're feeling a lot of the pain on paper. Then we've got surprise. This is really interesting. I thought some of you would talk about HR and purchasing, but everybody here is about reg and the bedside, and I like the last one there. Basically, it's the all of the above. Hope you can appreciate a little bit of the humor. When I was typing that out, I was like, yeah, you know, all the above. So, Chris, can you appreciate where these guys are coming from?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Chris, let's get to you. There we are. All right, so make sure you can see the screen now. Just all changed back properly because I can only see certain things. This is the about the speaker slide, right, Chris?
Okay.
All right, this is you.
Here?
This is you. So yeah, I'll let you take it from here, but I will say this is, guys, as I was typing out, you know, the about the speaker part, you know, Chris has, I think if you were to total this up, she's got more acronyms affiliated with her name than she has letters in her name. So clearly she's very well qualified, and more acronyms to come as well for Chris quite soon. So anyways, Chris, yeah, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, talk a little bit about where you are, where you've been, and then we'll progress forward from there.
Sure. So as I said, good morning, or more appropriately from Hawaii, aloha to everybody that's on the phone this morning, and thank you for joining us. So my name is Chris Wilson. I am the Director of the Information Systems and the Project Management Office for Hilo Medical Center and the East Hawaii region. So within our region, we have 1 acute hospital, 2 critical access hospitals, and 9 clinics. So across the board, we just onboarded our final clinic from paper to electronic record less than 12 days ago. So we've got our last clinic up, and we are a MEDITECH, we're a MEDITECH community here in Hawaii. Collectively, I started working in hospitals since I was about 19 years old, and I'll kind of explain my acronyms from left to right, and it'll tell a little bit about the story, and then we'll go into a little deeper dive into Hawaii. I started off in radiology. I was a radiologic technologist, and I was on the 9th island of Las Vegas. So before I moved back to Hawaii, I was in Vegas for about 10 years, where I attended UNLV, and I began my career as a radiologic technologist. And honestly, it will always be my first love. I love radiology, I love imaging, and just the ability to diagnose patients at the bedside. And with all the new technology that's coming out, it was a very exciting time. From there, I moved back to Hawaii, which I will always consider home, and I was onboarded onto the organization at a very pivotal point where we were looking for an electronic health record solution. It was at the cusp of meaningful use use. We were just starting to understand what ARA would bring, and we wanted to be ahead of the game there. So as I was onboarded, I was quickly kind of brought into the electronic health record project and implemented a number of modules for MEDITECH. We were implemented at a 6X stage, so I know there were probably a lot of Magic customers on the line or legacy products on the line. We came in at 6X, and then we most recently upgraded to 615. But my home base, as it's displayed there on the screen, I implemented the ITS module, CWS, most of the authorization and referral management. So I'm really understanding that kind of the breadth and depth of the front end of the product, including medical necessity and bedboard. And then we brought in patient portal with our meaningful use requirements. And then we went out and we took, after we implemented our acute hospital and our 2 critical access hospitals, we then implemented 9 ambulatory clinics. And the first timeline was very aggressive. We did 1 clinic every 16 weeks, and then we took a little bit of a breather, and then we really took some time to get 615 up and into our acute and web ambulatory environment, and then brought up our last clinic. So, I have kind of a well-rounded background in both healthcare and kind of MEDITECH's arena. So I've been in just about all of the products that MEDITECH has to offer. So I can speak to, at least at a high level, to just about everything. If anyone has further questions at the end of the presentation.
I appreciate that, Chris. And of course, I would ask you what you do in your spare time, but I don't think that you have much of that, right?
Right. And Cody and I bantered a little earlier. One of my hobbies is I am pursuing a PhD, and I'm in dissertation right now. So who knows, on a hope and a prayer, I hope to finish that by the end of the year.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And I also appreciate that, like I said, whenever I'm writing up your bio, just that it makes me feel like I haven't really achieved very much. So that feels good whenever I'm drawing these things up. So anyways, I appreciate that. All right, you talked to us a little bit about Hilo. Is there anything here that you really want to make a further point on after you went through that very lovely intro just a moment ago?
Sure. When we talk about, I'm not sure how many folks on the line have actually visited Hawaii. And for those of you that have, you know what the Big Island is often referred to. But if you look at the Hawaii archipelago, which are all of the islands in a chain, the Big Island is the largest island on the bottom of the chain. It has the largest land mass in comparison to the rest of the islands. So on the east side of the island, which is all of the facilities that I had previously mentioned, we cover about a service area of about 100,000 miles. So it is the breadth and depth of the service area is quite large. Our population is over 100,000 people. I'm sorry, it's 100 miles. Population is over 100,000 people, and quite interestingly, our payer matrix is over 76% Medicare and Medicaid. As Cody has on the screen, we also have the second busiest ER in the state of Hawaii. Now the actual capital for Hawaii is on Oahu, which is a smaller island, but that is our most population dense island. But in comparison to that island, because of the service area we do service, it is the second busiest ER with over 44,000 annual registrations. And then as I appreciate Cody putting on the screen, we do have our HIMSS EMR adoption model stage 7. We were awarded that in 2013, and then we just recertified a couple of months ago. And we're also a Nicholas E. Davies Award winner. So we've got, we've done a lot on the IT side, and then most recently we also got our 4th star, which the facility is incredibly proud about.
All right, and of course, we always like to offer you up for a site visit, but oddly enough, no hospitals have ever sent really anybody over there yet. But hey, if you're over here in the Northeast, stay tired of snow, you can go visit Chris sometime, All right, Chris, talk to us a little bit about things. Let's kind of move on and start talking about the implications of access at your organization. First and foremost, history. You gave us a pretty good, solid history as to yourself, history pertaining to some of the different MEDITECH modules that you've rolled out over there. So I'll just say this, how long have you been an Access customer? And because it's been quite some time now, and what did you buy us for in the first place there, based on your knowledge and experience?
Sure. So we've been an Access customer for over 5 years now, and it has been definitely a partnership with the Access eForms team. And what we sought to the solution that we were trying to solve, or the problem that we were trying to solve, was really trying to get more of the paper out of the organization. Once we transitioned to an EHR, we found ourselves spending more and more time scanning paper in, and honestly, the paper itself became a little more evident. When everything was paper, it didn't seem so bad. But when we started to transition to our electronic record and adoption got higher and higher, the paper was very, very obvious in the workflow. So one of the most obvious papers was the consent, or initial COA form, which is, that's the form that everybody signs as consent into the facility. So all of our patients needed to sign this form. It was originally in triplicate form, so there were 3 copies, one that we gave to the patient, one that we sent to medical records, one that went, honestly, I'm not sure where the 3rd form went, somewhere for someone's safekeeping. So really we were trying to get from the registration process, how do we make them paperless? Because it didn't make any sense that we were toting around these wows, we were entering all of our information electronically, yet we got held up on this one paper process that needed to go all the way back down to medical records to get scanned in. It just didn't make much sense. So that was the first problem that we were trying to solve. And we did look at, quite honestly, we looked at a number of different vendors when we went out to solve this particular problem. And we came upon, and in looking through all of the different vendors that were in front of us, we came upon Access eForms that, of course, had the integration with MEDITECH and had that relationship. But I also want to stress, as being completely honest and transparent, I also want to stress that the footprint of Access, as far as the user perspective, was much easier to navigate through. And kind of the devil's in the details when you implement the product. And I didn't have the time to pull 50 registrars into a room with a 2-hour PowerPoint to try to get them to understand how to use a solution. With Access, it was fairly simple, point and click. The integration was there. At the end of the registration process, they automatically went into Access eForms. All of the information they needed was there, and they could complete their process fairly easily. It wasn't a completely different look and feel to a product. It felt like they were integrated from one product to another.
Awesome. Appreciate that. All right, so that's the history. That's a little bit of how you brought it up and how you were able to implement it. So now talk to us about where you are today. What are you doing with respect to just enterprise forms management, eSignature? Of course, you're also using this over in the back office. After that, we can talk about where you're then going to go. But where are you today? Talk to us a bit about that.
So as far as using Access today, from a front-end perspective, because I see a lot of people on the poll, are understanding the pain points of the registration process. So of course, Access eForms has been in that space for about 4 years now. We use them for our consent of treatment, so that's the form that everybody gets when they log in. We get them for the Medicare forms, and these are automatic triggers that are in our system, so we don't have to go pull the form. The form already knows by getting the information from MEDITECH that this is a Medicare patient, and I need to sign my Medicare form. And then the same thing with TRICARE and the HIPAA acknowledgement. So from the front-end process, from our registration, we have very few forms. There's a few kind of finicky, I would say, insurance forms that we would still need to use, but the majority of our registration process is completely paperless. And then for the back office processes, which was a little more surprising to us than we thought it would be, and honestly a lot more revolutionary to the organization than we thought it would be, was we took a lot of our HR forms, and there's one particular form which is an employee transaction form that anytime an employee has any transaction done on them, whether it be, or I should say any position has a transaction on them as well, this needs to go through the entire organization from the manager all the way up to the CEO. So in the back office processes, we have started to implement more and more of our forms using Passport. And honestly, that has been just, I think we've already seen the realities of bringing our registration process to be paperless. Now with the HR process, to us, this is the next really big thing. So that's really exciting for our organization as well. So our back office processes are starting to get a little less paper dense.
Right, and we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit, and we'll talk about, for example, your CEO's perspective on converting some of those paper-based processes to electronic processes. For now, though, let's, focusing on e-signature for registration and the deployment of that, and kind of the before and after picture. Let's talk a little bit about that if we can. So talk to us about your process before, and again, as you had pointed back to the poll, I think it was like 40% of the people on the session today pointed to that the registration is one of their key paper-based, areas for paper-based issues. So I'm sure what you're about to say as far as this before is probably going to really resonate with just about everybody that you're talking with on the line.
Yeah, and I appreciate going back to this because I often talk too fast, so Cody, let me know if I'm talking too fast. But,
That's perfect.
okay, so the before process, as illuminated on the screen. So before we'd have a printer. A lot of people use Office Max. We had probably 2 people dedicated to just forms management on trying to find all of the forms that we use in the organization. So we would send these to the printer. They would print, and we would store boxes and boxes, if not pallets, of these forms. When we needed the form or when we needed to refresh the stock that's on the floor, we would find it at the bedside. The registrars would then write on the form to fill it out. Patient would sign it, and then that would kind of go into a file somewhere that would then make its way down to medical records to be scanned. So medical records have to pull the patient up in the system, find them, scan it into their file. That went through a QA process because, of course, anything that gets scanned in needs to have 2 eyes on it, make sure we got the right patient in the EHR. And then eventually that would end up filed into our EHR record.
Right, and that's pretty much the story that we hear time and time again with other MEDITECH clients, so I'm sure you're probably getting a lot of head nods from the audience on that one. So, all right, so that was the before. Here's your after.
Right, so now in electronic eForms, so we've got a number of forms built in there. So now the registrars can either select the form, or honestly, the form is selected for them at the end of the registration process. So they click on the access button, they select the patient, they go ahead and show the form. Normally we're showing the form on the screen. We also have laminated copies of the form that are usually on the walls, and we ask the patient if you'd like a copy of the form, we're more than happy to print one out for them. But they take a look at the form on the screen. The registrar then goes over any of the sections of the form that may seem confusing, and the patient signs, and the form is then automatically captured by MEDITECH.
Awesome. All right, so this is what you used beforehand, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so it's about 44,000 paper-based forms you guys are using to capture signatures. So what you're looking at right there, just also for some sheer volume, that's a stack of 440 forms. Multiply that out by 100, so that's 44,000. So it hopefully gives you a little scope and scale of this. And of course, once you implemented this and converted it to, moved away from paper, you're left with one form, right?
Yep, one eForm in the system instead of pallets of forms in boxes on the ground.
Right, so obviously a little bit of a change there. All right, so implementation, this pretty much speaks for itself, but if you want to talk about that and also provide any other insight, go right ahead.
Yeah, the implementation process was fairly seamless. The Access team was wonderful. Basically, what we did was hand over our forms. So within, everyone's contract's going to be a little bit different, but how we structured ours was we had a certain number of forms that Access was going to help us build, and then we would kind of build on our own as we went forward from there. So we handed the form over to Access, and they replicated that form into the system. We went through kind of back and forth with the trial, just making sure all the forms lined up, it printed out okay, it read off the face sheet okay, and all the information that we needed was captured on the form. And then after that, that took about, I want to say that took about 6 weeks to get it to include, I should say, end user training. And then we installed the application on the machines that capture registration, and we were live.
Excellent.
So
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, it was really a turnkey almost product at that point.
And I appreciate that. And hey, I do want to take a moment to tell the audience as well that this 6-week implementation, that's not just because our team was clamoring to go and work on Chris's project because it was in Hawaii. Trust me, if you're in Akron, Ohio, or if you're in Baltimore, our people are just as eager to go visit those places as well. But anyhow, all right, savings. There you go, Chris. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so through the process, as we mentioned, ordering the forms, having staff man the forms. So we calculated over $200,000 worth of savings within the first year to 2 years. And of course, the savings that you get on the efficiencies of the process are almost invaluable. You really can't quantify those as well as you'd like to, but there's also those soft savings that are within our hard dollars.
Absolutely. And guys, hey, through working with Hilo and through working with some other customers, we have actually formulated a really good and really cool you can call it an e-signature ROI calculator if you wanted to, but we actually call it just an efficiency analysis tool. And one of the big things, if you look at e-signature and registration, which is pretty much if you're in the, I know we have people here from Canada, we have people here from actually Ireland and Europe, Chris, that are on the line here with us, and so we're all a little bit different. But as far as looking at this with regards to the registration process is concerned, it's all pretty much the same registration process, for example, with U.S. hospitals. Okay, you're going to have more or less the same kind of forms. The same forms that Chris has is the same form that you probably are going to have if you're, again, a U.S. hospital. And so what we've experienced is most hospitals want to start in the registration area because that's the low-hanging fruit, right? It's a again, as Chris said, it's pretty much a turnkey process. And what we've experienced as we work on these efficiency analysis studies, which our people are happy to work with any of you guys on, is we're able to determine pretty easily the quantity of paper that is eliminated in registration and how that compares to the quantity of forms that no longer flow to medical records. So, for example, there's another MEDITECH hospital that we're working with. We did the efficiency analysis study, and through eliminating the paper in registration, it was an overall 18% reduction in paper across the entire organization. On the same token, we work with another organization, and it was 32% reduction in paper across the entire organization as a result of eliminating paper and registration. So again, it does have some pretty common sense, easy to understand savings and efficiencies to be gained from that. So Chris, this probably should look quite familiar to you. If you want, walk us through this, talk a little bit about your forms and how this works as far as data transfer.
Sure. So this is the consent, or this is the conditions of admission and treatment form. We often kind of call it our consent for treatment form because that's normally what the front desk calls it. So this was a form that we replicated. It was on paper. This was our triplicate form that we had to stock because it was the #1 form in the organization. Everybody got this coming through the door. So we handed this particular form over to Access eForms, and what it does is at the end of the registration process, and I'm going to say this a couple of times just so folks can kind of follow me. I say it the first time, and I think you conceptualize it the next couple of times. Maybe you'll follow it from here. So at the end of the MEDITECH registration process, there's usually a box that pops up, and that box says you want to print your barcodes, you want to print this, you want to print that. That actually triggers this action, and it will put the fields at the top in the header, so the patient identifiers, whatever you choose to put on the form. We chose the medical record number, account number, and then patient name. And we'll also autofill the date for this form. And of course, this form is customizable. If there's different, sometimes you have an opt-in for your state if you're doing the exchange, or if there's other things that need to be on this form. We've typically sent it back to Access. They make the changes. We put it into test it, get it into live, and then it goes back into production. And then at the end of the form, so basically this is what we show on the screen, or we give them the laminated handout, and then the patient goes ahead and signs on the signature pad, and then makes any appropriate checks. Our healthcare facility representative, who's usually our admission staff, will also sign. If there's two signatures needed, they sign at the same time. And then after this form has been completed, and there's a complete button, that automatically files directly into MEDITECH. So it's within seconds, it's available within MEDITECH.
Excellent. And here in just a moment too, guys, I will actually demonstrate some e-signature technology, just because what I heard in one of our previous webinars is like, oh, it's great to hear the customer story, but it also would be helpful to actually see the product work a little bit. You know, this is not the purpose of the session is to have like a product demonstration or something, but just to know what Chris is talking about and see it in action briefly is a good thing. So we'll talk about that. Actually, I say that. Let me make sure I didn't pass up anything here. Oh, no, it is the next slide. Okay, what's the next piece here? We're going to be demonstrating some things. All right, Chris, so eSignatures, you talked about using it within the context of registration. And again, that's where most all of our customers start. But obviously, patients sign documents in other areas of the hospital outside the context of registration. So I know you guys have a plan to tackle that. Talk a little bit about that if you don't mind, as far as what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be expanding it, how you're going to do that. Just give us a little preview of what you're working on there, please.
Sure. So expanding patient e-signature, and I will kind of temper this conversation with every organization is a little bit different, and honestly, we've got a small department, so wherever the fire is where we tend to march towards. So we would have liked to have patient e-signature expanded a long time ago, but we only had limited resources, so we had to focus where the focus was. But our next continual focus for patient e-signature is the operative form. And this form is for every patient that comes in that's going to get a procedure. And the struggle that we found with the form is that it needs text actually typed into the form, because no procedure is going to be the same. No doctor has the same exact verbiage that they call the procedure, and you have to say it in a technical term and a layman's term. And then, we wanted the ability to not have 100 different forms for every procedure, yet just have one operative form where we can do a form fillable, typable form, which also contains the blood consent form, and then have the patient sign and have the doctor sign. So that really is our next step for patient e-signature. What we want to do, though, is make sure that we roll it out correctly. And one of those correct steps is trying to capture that electronic form in the physician offices. So we're looking into technology and we're looking into workflows that we can take our operative form and have the physician have that conversation in his office, which is a little bit more appropriate in most cases if it's an elective surgery, that they have this conversation in private, and then they can also sign that form and it will file into our EHR. So that's really what we're looking for in terms of capturing that. Our first step will likely be in-house on the floor, and then we'll roll out to the physician offices.
Beautiful. And as far as, I'd love to hear it. If you want to talk about it, that's fine, or you can do it towards the end, because I know I've seen some questions actually asking about the devices that you guys are using. So like I said, if you want to talk about it now, you can do it, or you can save it to the end. But as far as what and again, rubbing the crystal ball, and we'll see what happens in the future, what sort of devices would you be using in conjunction with these operative, or what a lot of people call procedural consent forms? What kind of devices do you anticipate using?
Well, currently we will be using the workstation on wheels, VALs, they're also called COWs, and we'll be having signature pads. So we've got the signature pads on hand, so we'll retrofit most of our COWs with those. We are looking at using tablets in the future if there is a need for that, but currently we're gonna keep it simple. We've already got the WOWs in-house, and that's the only really limiting factor to the device.
Excellent, and I appreciate that. Any other implications as far as where you're going to take this, whether it may be radiology or anywhere else that you want to highlight here? If not, we can keep on moving forward, and I can show off some of the eSignature product. Your choice.
No, I'd probably leave off with really where we could go with patient e-signatures anywhere. Radiology is a great example because we've got an MRI form that folks need to fill out to make sure that they're a candidate for a procedure. CT is the same way for computed tomography. So we could really take this and apply it just about anywhere in our hospital that has patient e-signature.
Right, and on that note, guys, because look, on the line here, I know we've got a good mixture of existing customers that are on the line. We also have a good mixture of I'll call it potential customers and partners. And so we oftentimes see this being used in registration. Chris talked about that. Procedural consent is usually where people want to carry this off to. But then radiology comes into the picture, and all of a sudden you start to realize, wow, there's a lot of paper that's filled out in the radiology in the way of questionnaires. If you're going to get a CT, you got to fill out a questionnaire. If you're going to get an MRI, it's a questionnaire. If you're going to get some contrast, usually we see a blood contrast consent form involved. So there's a lot of paper that's signed over there in radiology as well. So, all right, so let's talk about eSignature, the actual products itself. So To some of you, the existing products, what you're going to see right here is actually the newer version of the products. For those of you that have never seen our products before, then, well, here's our product. So the eSignature application that would be involved in the registration process, which that's what most people really want to focus on, is it really looks like this. Chris did a really good job of describing the protocols that would initiate or launch this particular product, but basically you go through a MEDITECH registration MEDITECH registration process, and our system will automatically select the forms based upon that particular patient, and then from there we will put these forms into this particular application and make it available to the registration clerk. So let's say that Wanda Wilson was registered, and here's the forms that Wanda needs to fill out. I have a consent for treatment, an important message from Medicare, a HIPAA policy acknowledgement. I could actually, and this is pretty cool for a lot of our new customers, is I could click on this icon right here. It could bring up a barcode, and then I could grab an iPad if I wanted to leverage an iPad. I could scan that barcode on my registration clerk's screen, and it would actually bring the forms from the server over onto that iPad for completion. So that's pretty nifty. If you're using a large, like a touchscreen monitor, if you're using a LCD device, then you could just also complete these right on that device. So I'm going to click on the consent for treatment. I click on that, and it actually brings up a procedural consent form in a browser. So everything that we're showing you here is browser delivered. That's the where we are taking this product. I know some of you other customers have something that's maybe a bit more local. It's a good product. It's a bit of an older product. This is where we're going. So here we have all the patient information that is merged onto the form, and then down below here's a variety of spaces for the patients to sign. And as Chris said, you see, and what they're doing is they have multiple places for people to sign. You've got the patient, you've got a representative of the hospital. In this case, you also have an interpreter signature. So I'm going to click on that signature area, and it brings up the signature capture area there. So if I'm using an LCD pad, then I can capture the signature on an LCD pad. If I'm doing this on a touch screen, then I can do that. I'm doing this on a Microsoft Surface Pro 2, so I'm going to sign using a stylus. If I was doing this on an iPad, I could just use my finger, and I'll sign Cody. So there's my signature. It's as simple as that. And as Chris said, you could click on complete, and then it goes back into patient's record in the scanning system. I'll just click on this one form right here, because this basically it starts to get a little bit redundant, and like I said, I don't want to spend too much time in the product itself. Here is a HIPAA acknowledgement form. Again, HIPAA of course being a United States-based thing, but in Canada they have something similar, Ireland similar, Europe, United Kingdom, similar things. So we've got similar situation, patient information is merged onto it, but we also have here though as well, we have the signature capture area, we also have check boxes, so I can check off, yes, I would like to receive communication from the hospital, or no, I don't want to receive communication from the hospital. So it's not just about capturing a signature, it also has some data collection components to it as well. So I'll just go ahead and sign this again, so that way you can see that in action one more time in my very swoopy handwriting, trying to do well for you guys. So there's just a quick look at the product again, just so you can have some connotation as to what Chris was talking about and how they're using it. So getting back over to Chris and her story about how she's leveraging our technology to eliminate paper, one of the things that I asked Chris as we were preparing for this, I said, Chris, what's been one of the products that have made the biggest impact in your organization? And on my notepad, I was already writing down patient electronic signature. I was mentally going down that pathway, because for sure that's what Chris is going to say, right? And Chris surprised me. She was like, actually, it's eliminating the paper from the human resources processes. I was like, okay, so I had to scratch that off. So Chris, talk to us further, if you would, a little bit more detail about how you're using us on the back office. And if you want to talk about the before and after, if you want to talk about the problems, that's great. But this whole thing regarding the employee action form, or a lot of people call them personnel action forms, that's a really cool story. So talk to us about that, please.
Sure. So when we started, as I said, with your limited resources that everybody's probably got across the board and limited funding, one of the things that we looked at, we had the employee action forms, which were kind of the HR suite, and the consent forms. And we sat down and we said, okay, which one are we going to tackle first, because we don't have enough people to do both. And we went for the employee action forms because we decentralized HR, so we have to move them off of campuses. Probably everybody is doing now that things are more electronic. We can get more I should say, clinical-based departments on campus, and then we're moving all of our non-clinical based departments or business office functions off campus. So when moving them off campus, that also kind of highlighted to us another large gap, because any form that went from HR to campus, which administration still sits on campus, now took a 5-hour walk and or multiple hands trying to get it up onto campus. And even when they were on campus, these employee action forms were normally filled out by HR, sent over to the department head or the department manager, then to another department manager who oversaw a larger portion of the department, then to our HR, our CFO, and then finally up onto the CEO's desk. And all of that was in manila envelopes sorted back and forth, and honestly could take up to 3 weeks or even longer. If these forms got lost anywhere within the process completely stopped and went back to the starting point. So when we looked at these forms, we said, okay, you know what, let's try and get at least one form off of paper, and the employee action form being the most important, because normally if you have some sort of action on a position, you need it done more likely right away. So we took our form, we gave it to Access eForms, and we started working with them. And this particular form, I want to say, has over 22 fillable fields on the form, because every little section of the form is is important as far as FTE amount, or if they're a full-time, part-time. So everything that you could think of is captured on this form. So we took this form, we gave it to Access, they replicated the form, we went through a trial process, and now this form is created in HR and then sent directly to the department manager, who, if it gets sent to me, I sign off on it. And an important aspect in this process, which we also didn't realize, is we are actually keying in signatures for this form. So we don't have a bunch of people having signature pads on their desk. So their authentication process is username and password, the system username and password. And then that form, after I sign it and my department manager signs it, who's above me, it automatically goes out to the CFO and the HR director. So they sign the form, and after that action happens, it then goes to the CEO for final signature. So that process in and of itself, I can't speak to how it streamlined our forms from HR going through the organization. And we also made the form available, because most of us have email. We have work email now on our phone, so we also made that form available on your phone or your tablet. So if you click on it from the link, it will launch, and you're able to sign on your smartphone. So you can sign in a meeting, you can sign when you're on vacation. So there's very little hindrance to the form not moving through the process appropriately. And then a kind of funny tidbit, our CEO, after we went live with the, we call it the HR1, our employee action form, we also went live with an out-of-state travel form. And I was in his office one day, and he had gotten the form in paper form on his desk, and I said, hey, that's in Access, correct? And he said, it is. So he walked out and he told the admin staff, he said, you know what, I'm not signing this form anymore on paper. Starting Monday, everything needs to go on Access eForms for this HR1. So we've got the ball really rolling on the HR forms, and from the administrative suite, they really appreciate everything being in one place and it being electronic.
Yeah,
and then go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
And where we could go from there is really anybody's guess. It's we're getting asked every day, can this form be electronic, can that form be electronic? So we'll likely have a whole another better set of problems on the other hand of everyone wanting to use Passport for the business applications.
Well, I can appreciate that. And guys, we use the product ourselves here at Access, so we use it for all of our HR forms and purchasing and materials forms. We use it for employee evals. We use it for new employee onboarding. So it really has been quite the fantastic solution just for our own company, especially considering that we are all spread out across the place. That's how our company is set up. I'm in New Hampshire. Our president's in Kansas City. Our VP of Professional Services is in Florida. So we're all over the place. So being able to sign these things in a mobile perspective is really good. And also, again, as I mentioned earlier, MEDITECH uses this product. So if you want to talk to anybody over at MEDITECH about that, again, they can serve as actual reference for us. They're using this all the way up to the C-suite every day. There was certain executives actually that were really wanting us to be in there, as they were having to sign tremendous amounts of paper and actually shuttle paper in cars from one of the MEDITECH offices to another. So, all right, I am looking at my watch here, and I want to make sure that we do end at an appropriate time and then get over to some of the questions. But this is a very important part that I find that we need to go over, and that's, while you have a sales presentation, we've all been there before, and it looks really shiny and squeaky, but Chris, you mentioned earlier the devil's in the details, right? One of those details that people oftentimes don't consider is the impact of that technology to the culture of your organization, culture with respect to patients, culture with respect to your staff. And so I'm curious how your people have reacted to these changes with the implications of, patient e-signature, and also, for that matter, too, the electronic back office forms that you're trying to convert into our passport system. Oh, Chris, you still there?
Yes, sorry, I'm talking on
There you go. No problem. It's all good. I'm sure it was a wonderful answer you were giving, I'm sure. So go ahead.
Let me rewind. So as far as how our culture has reacted to these changes, so honestly, patient e-signature went without incident. The application in and of itself is fairly seamless, and as I said, going back to the devil's in the details, and for us, the details are in training. If we have to get people out of their main focus workflow and train them to do another workflow or another application, it just won't sell very well. So the footprint of Access eForms was very easy to use. The user interface is very clear. There's really no guessing as to what you need to do next. It's pretty much self-explanatory. So the patient electronic e-signature, that process went flawlessly, I would say. The electronic back office forms, it took a little bit of convincing for HR to understand that this was going to work. For a lot of times, there were 3 main people in HR that I was working with for that employee action form, and they said, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work. But it's been about 3 months now, and I think they're pretty much on board. They understand how much the process has improved and the paper has decreased, and their jobs essentially are easier. From a patient's perspective, our patients have reacted well. They're now being registered in the computer at bedside, which is a big wow for our little rural community. And then seeing that patient, seeing the electronic form signature coupled with that process and parallel to that process is another big wow for them. So our patients are fairly impressed. We've only had maybe 1 or 2 patients come back and question the signature as far as, did I really sign this form? And Access has a really great product that will track the actual pressure on the form, and the timestamp within the server. So if there's any questions or there's any audits, we can always go back to them, and that's what we've told our patient. I wouldn't really say there were very, very many challenges of getting our staff on board. They were all for getting more paper processes into electronic form. So the sell was easy at this point. We were 2 years into the EHR process, so they understood that the more paper that there was going to be, the more kind of bottleneck in the process that would create. So I would say the culture adapted pretty well to the entire product.
Awesome, appreciate that. All right, and this we're gonna end off with. I always like to ask the people that I do these webinars with this very interesting question, right? And as they say, hindsight's 20/20. So if you could do it all over again, based on what you know now, what you've learned, what you've experienced, the pros, the cons, the ups, the downs, the successes and failures, I could go on and on. What would you do differently? So, we have an audience here. Again, a lot of them are current customers. They use Access, but maybe they don't use it for anything electronic yet. We have some people that are on the line that don't have any technology that they're using with regards to forms management or electronic forms. So, from your experience, what would you do differently? And for the people on the line here, where would you recommend that they start to use an application like this and use it in conjunction with a MEDITECH environment? That would be really helpful to know.
Okay, so to answer the first question, what would I do differently? There isn't too much I would have done differently, except for probably start a little bit earlier in the process. But for everybody on the line, likely they have an EHR and they're using it. So we brought up our EHR. If we would have put coupled access into that process a little bit closer to the actual implementation date, that would have been probably the only gain that we could have gotten from the process. It would have reduced having to shift the focus to scanning, which HIM took the burden off of that. So that's the only thing that I think we would have really done differently. As far as where would I recommend people start with your most highly utilized form. If there's one form, as we started with, if there's one form that 99% of your patients get, or even 60% of your patients get if you're down to your electronic processes that well, then start off with that form. Get that form right, because that will get your people to have initial buy-in to see, hey, this is really going to help all the processes. This is going to help me get this form into the system quicker. This is going to help me capture that electronic form, or me capture that electronic signature quicker. So I would recommend starting with your most highly utilized form, and then, you know, kind of going down the list of forms that are less utilized as you go.
I think that's a great answer, and you know, guys, from my perspective and working with other customers, what I've typically seen is, again, that starting in the registration area, that's where most of the forms are born from, and then they expand from there. And that's what's going to, from our experience working with a lot of other customers, that's where you're going to get your most bang for your buck. So certainly, what Chris is saying, you know, start with the most utilized forms. It's great advice. All right, anything else, Chris, that you want to cover here before we open up to questions?
No, final considerations, you know, it's been 5 years with Access, and we have been in partnership with them for the last 5 years, and we feel like we have a very good relationship with them. And really, if you're looking for a partner, you know, for us, and we can only speak from our personal vantage point, Access is very much a partner, just as MEDITECH is to us. We all know our MEDITECH analysts. We know the analyst supervisor, and we know them by name at this point. And you know, for us, it's the same thing with Access. We're on the phone with them still 5 years later, just about every week. They at least try to reach out and continue the conversation and make sure that we are developing their product, and we are developing our workflows to, you know, the best that they could be and the most productive that they could be.
Well, Chris, you know how to make us blush. I appreciate that. And of course, we certainly appreciate you as a customer, as well as we appreciate everybody else here that's on the line that's using our products today. You know, a big special to, you know, thank you to all of you guys that are coming in. Chris, you know, my goodness, really thank you so much for taking all this time here with us today and running through your story, because again, it's really helpful to it's one thing to talk to a guy like myself that's going to talk to you about products. It's another thing to look at a demonstration, but it's another thing altogether to talk to an end user that's using those products, using the same applications as they are, and to get their real-world perspective on things. So that's massively helpful. So, all right, let's take a look at some of these questions here. I will also say this, you know, as we go through these questions, you've seen my information right there. Feel free, if you need anything at all, to either go to our website. There's a lot of really cool stuff on there that you can download and check out, or if you want to give me a ring, well, I've got a lot of telephone numbers, and depending on where you are, you should be able to reach me pretty easily. Of course, you also have email right down there at the bottom. So I am here to help and here to serve. So let's take a look at those questions. Let me open up that tab. Bear with me for 1 second, because I want to pop this thing out of here. All right. So let's cover some questions here. And so as I go through these questions, you know, if we answer your question appropriately, great. If you have a follow-up question, just type that question in that question tab. So again, guys, if you want to ask more questions now, go to the user interface of GoToMeeting and type some questions in there. Here's an interesting question here. First and foremost, MEDITECH similar to Cerner? Question mark. So that is a very interesting question. I'll say at a very high level, yes, it is similar. Those are, and Chris, if you want to answer this, you're fine, but this is a pretty basic one. MEDITECH is a system that's similar to that of a Cerner application, that it serves as the core hospital information system. You have your systems out there like, you know, MEDITECH, Cerner, Epic, those types of systems. So while this is a webinar focused and geared towards MEDITECH users, we have customers using a variety of different systems, and we try to stay as agnostic as possible to the systems that come in and out of hospitals. So we have many hospitals that are using Cerner. We have a lot of hospitals that start off as one system and then they migrate to another, whether that's going from MEDITECH to something else or something else to MEDITECH, and we try to remain as constant as possible. Okay. So let's go through and ask another question or answer another question. But I'm gonna skip around because I just see one other question here. Here's one that comes up. Can this product be used with the Athena EMR as well? So I manage our partnerships. I own the relationship that we have with MEDITECH. What I'll also tell you is, as of 2016, we are also the official electronic forms vendor for Athena Health. Okay, this last week I was at the Athena Health More Disruption Please fair that they put on for their employees down in Boston. So the short answer, can we work with Athena Health? The answer is yes. The answer is we are their exclusive eForms partner. So that's pretty cool. All right, on to some other questions. Okay, so Chris, you touched on this earlier. What version of MEDITECH are you on? If you don't mind restating that, please.
Sure, MEDITECH 6.15, which is a step up from 6X, so it has the rewritten programs for Revenue Cycle, ORM, and it rewrote all of Web Ambulatory. So it was previously LSF and is now Web Ambulatory. So it's the newest product from MEDITECH. We're probably within the top 20 hospitals that have received the product, and that number may be a bit inflated. We may be about the top 10.
Right. So obviously, just you guys are some of the first ones to cross that line. So I'm sure there's probably a whole other list of questions that people would have for you based on that. So there's that. Okay. How has eSignature impacted? I'm abbreviating this question a little bit here just to get to the heart of it. How has eSignature impacted HIM?
So the greatest impact to HIM is the reduction in scanned form. We still do go through and make sure that the forms have some QA process to make sure that things are filing appropriately. But as we are a few years into using it for patient capture or electronic form signature patient capture on the front end, they being the staff and administration as well, we pretty much trust the product. So there's not a ton of QA that goes in, but the definite impact was reducing the amount of scanned forms.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And guys, we also have a lot of other case studies and whatnot. Again, go back over to the resources here. Even just in the GoToMeeting, I've got another tab for handouts that you can go and download the infographic for Halifax that shows the impact as to the quantity of paper that was eliminated there and the implications that that had directly on HIM. But simply put, if you're not producing the paper, people in HIM aren't having to put hands on it, scan it, and QA it. So that certainly is a good thing. Here's another question here. What brand of devices work with eSignature? And then it goes to follow on saying we've not been able to get our tablets to work. So that's what's from somebody named Cindy. So Cindy, I'm not too sure if you're a current customer and you're trying to make our applications work on a tablet. If so, obviously we can have a conversation offline about that. But let's get back to the first part of that question, though. Chris, over to you. What brand of the devices do you work with for eSignature?
I will be ashamed to tell you that it just escaped me. It's not Diamond. That's a good question that I had a feeling you were going to ask.
Yeah, well, hey, with the amount of information that you've tried to put up in your head, henceforth, like going through the PhD process, I think you pretty much get a pass, right? You've forgotten more than a lot of us will ever know. So, let me take a stab and answer that from the perspective of not exactly you, Chris, but what most other customers do, is in the registration area. If they're wanting to use a LCD device, we typically see customers using the Wacom, WACOM. Devices, specifically the STU530 models. We actually even resell those and oftentimes prepackage them with the technology, and we've historically done that. For the other tablets and questions along those lines, and for the current customers too, I want you guys all to know that the direction that we're going is we are, like MEDITECH and like a lot of other technologies, we are moving from away from the client, and we are moving more towards web-based or browser-delivered solutions. So whenever we do that, and whenever we incorporate that with eSignature or an electronically fillable document, whether it has clinical applications or the back office applications, whenever it's a pure HTML5 product, at that point in time, the device actually becomes, less relevant. So we have customers that are using this, again, in conjunction with various LCD devices, but we also have customers that are using this from a tablet perspective. Any tablet that has browser-delivered capability, so iPads, Microsoft Surfaces, or, Fire tablets, whatever, we can work with for our web-based product, which, again, really is our future. Okay. Here's a question for you, Chris. Do you use Access to print barcoded wristbands?
No, we currently do not use Access for that function.
Are you using MEDITECH for that?
Yeah, we're using MEDITECH.
All right, cool. We have a lot of hospitals using us for barcodes on the wristbands. If you guys want to, whoever asked that question, if you want to talk to another customer about that, we got plenty you can talk with. Okay, what devices? Okay, you already answered this. Here's another question about the devices for eSig. Here's another question about what devices you're going to use on the floors, which you've talked about that a little bit. I think basically the devices that you're planning on using on the floors to capture eSignature, you're using the workstations on wheels right now, so you're still going to make use of that. You will experiment with some different tablets in the future, and also tablets being used in the doctor's office. Is that a correct summary?
Yes.
Okay. Now here's a question. This is a really good question. You spoke about this a little bit earlier, but it bears repeating. For HR, can you sign off on your phone?
Yes. So for the HR form, once the form is initiated, you get a email. So we set it up through email notification, and in that email there's a link. So what we have enabled is if you click on that link, it will launch the form on your phone or on your device, and then you can click on the link, enter your username and password, and it will electronically sign that form on your phone.
Excellent. And so that brings up an interesting point, just so we can all kind of get on the same page as far as terminologies. The term is, digital signatures, and digital signatures can encompass both the graphical signature that one would use on an LCD pad, like that they're actually signing using a stylus. That is a digital signature, and we use that. Most times that's used for patient implications, but for the implications with regards to employees or physicians, as Chris had talked about, those are usually digital signatures, but they are more username password based signatures. So again, still digital signature just like the graphical signature, but it's username password, and that's what we also use here at Access for signing off on forms. Okay, here's a good question. Chris, I don't think I've heard you actually give this answer. I know what you're using, but what are you using for your scanning system over in medical records?
So for the scanning system, as far as, are we thinking hardware or just the overall?
No, just your MEDITECH Scan Archive, right?
Yeah, we're using MEDITECH's product, the SCA product of scanning and archiving.
All right, excellent. Here's another question. Can you build your own forms?
Yes, you can.
All right, cool.
Absolutely.
And another question here. Just I've got a few more lined up. One question is, are you doing anything with discharge forms other than just including them in the eForms repository? And then it goes on to say, any collaboration with MEDITECH and their discharge routine?
That is a very good question, because the discharge routine and forms is a continuous pain point. So that is also a future project phase for Access eForms for bedside signature. So currently we are using the discharge packet as printed out of MEDITECH, and that's pretty customizable. But as far as capturing any electronic form signature on that packet, we have not implemented that yet. But we are willing to talk to MEDITECH and discuss with both MEDITECH and Access how we can make that happen.
All right, excellent. Yeah, and guys, we've had a lot of conversations with MEDITECH about that, and that's one of those things that, yeah, we can do it. Yeah, we've got that stuff all figured out. It's just a matter of the customers crossing that line to actually doing that. So that certainly is not nearly as much of a low-hanging fruit as it is the registration, and one of the reasons is because it's more complicated, right? There's a lot of stuff shifting and moving on that's got more moving parts. So we have a lot of people asking that very same question, and we know how to do it. We just need somebody to actually do it. Okay, here's a good question. And so, Chris, I'll let you take a stab at this just based on your setup, because I don't know if you are or not. But anyways, does this work in an M-site, which maybe that means MEDITECH, Citrix environment with MEDITECH at the M-site and your product on servers at the hospital. So are you using our solution in regards to a Citrix setup or not?
No, we currently aren't.
Okay, so go
yeah,
ahead.
I think the dependency is, or we're at least not using it for bedside signature because of the dependency of the signature pad.
Right. Okay. So Patricia is the one that's asking that question. The long and the short answer is, we see a lot of different people have different environments and setups, but Citrix is one that we've been working with since 2004. So we're very comfortable with Citrix. We have other customers that are using our electronic signature solutions in conjunction with Citrix. What's also very interesting is that, again, as we move away from our classic technologies that are more client-based, which are still, can work through Citrix, as we move towards more of a browser-delivered technology, the Citrix environments do become less and less of a concern for obvious reasons. Okay, another question here. Okay, so for registration packets, can users choose a printer at will, or is the registration packet configured with the client to PC association and auto print? That's a very good question, and I am very happy to answer that as well. But Krista, if you have some interesting things that you want to talk about there, you're more than welcome to, because you obviously get it to a certain degree.
Sure. So all of our registration packets, if the patient chooses to have a physical hard copy, they're all defaulted to one printer, but the user could always choose a redirected printer if they wanted to.
That's a perfect answer. There's nothing at all that I can add to that. So, okay, I'm looking at the questions here. Chris, that's the last one. So I'm gonna kind of do like a an auctioneer with the going once, going twice. Any other questions? If so, get those questions in, because we have obviously gone over our time here. So what I'll say now is, Chris, thank you. Thank you for being a customer. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to spend with us here and go over, your experience with our technologies, the different ways that you've used it, and sharing the lessons learned. Really appreciate you doing that. And of course, for everybody on the line here, thank you for your time. Again, the customers that are online that are actually using our products, again, a special thank you to you guys for using our technologies. And if you're working with the likes of, say, Kiffer or Clayton, and you like what you see here, you want to dive deeper into it, those guys can help you. Otherwise, we'll all be following up with you guys. We'll send an email out again with the e-signature buying guide as well. But really appreciate everybody's time. Again, Chris, though, thank you so much. Really appreciate everything, and hey, best of luck to you and using the products in your MEDITECH. Basically your MEDITECH implications going on there, what all you're doing, and of course the PhD. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Cody, and thanks everyone. It's my pleasure. Good luck.
All right. Take care, guys. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.